Jeremy Corbyn was smeared as a racist on the BBC. Founder of Blue Labour Maurice Glassman called Corbyn a racist lunatic.
This government has no clear vision, and do you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is the problem. Nobody expected the Conservatives to disintegrate as they did. In 2019...
Right, but I'm asking about your government now.
No, I get it. What I'm saying is, I mean, I was part of that conversation. We thought we had two terms. You know, the first one was to actually get rid of sort of racist and lunatic politicians in the Labour Party, i.e. the Labour leadership at that time. We had to do a lot of work there. And I think the second term was going to be developing policy.
I mean, at least he admitted the entire Starmer project was not about winning an election or a project to change the country, but to simply destroy Corbyn. I mean, the idea that you would hold off an entire parliament on policy and wait for the second term is absolutely insane. Now, notice he received absolutely no pushback from Victoria Derbyshire. Hamza Youssef called her out on Twitter. Last night on Newsnight, the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn was described as racist lunatic politicians, i.e. the Labour leadership at that time. Why did this go unchecked by presenter Victoria Derbyshire or any panellist, including Newsnight's policy editor Nicholas Watt? And guess what? To my surprise, Derbyshire actually responded. Hi Hamza, I just got back and rewatched. Yes, I should have challenged Maurice Glassman on this. I am sorry. I absolutely made a mistake in the middle of a very busy programme about Keir Starmer. This isn't an excuse at all, just tiny bits of explanation. But look, she should have pushed back, 100%. It was her journalistic duty to do so, and she failed. But I actually appreciate that she acknowledged her errors and responded, because most journalists wouldn't do that. Now, Glassman continued on his anti-left tirade and called Paul Holden's book, The Fraud, a conspiracy.
By the way, The Fraud is an appalling book. I like Get In. I think Fraud is leftist conspiratorial drivel, and I'm willing to go all the way on that. I really think it's poor, and I was around that, and I can vouch for the fact that it's inaccurate.
Richard Sanders, the director of the second episode of The Labour Files, fired back. Would have been interested to see Maurice Glassman challenged to provide a scintilla of evidence to support his criticism of Paul Holden's meticulously researched book. Sounds like Glassman is pushing the conspiracy here. Now, Jeremy Corbyn has responded, replying to Victoria Derbyshire. Thank you, Victoria. What he said was disgraceful, baseless, and shameful. Equally shameful was when he supported a ban on immigration. I'll continue to speak up for a more equal society for all communities. Harriet, even though Derbyshire acknowledged her error, I mean, it's clear that smears and attacks against Corbyn and the left gets a pass in the media. What are your thoughts?
The media constantly get a free pass when it comes to smearing Jeremy Corbyn and smearing the left. And that's why independent media is so important. And I'm going to just use this little chance here to be like, if you don't already subscribe to or are a supporter of Novara Media, I really hope you will become one. And of Turn Left, and I'm really pleased to be here sort of collabing between the two organisations tonight. So if we look at this smear on Corbyn, right, essentially being called a racist with no pushback from the two other people in the room who had a duty to do so, it actually brings to mind the most key elements of the BBC story that's been leading headlines all week, where two BBC top brass have resigned over a misleading edit of a Donald Trump speech, right? But that happened to Jeremy Corbyn and no one got fired. So it was a Laura Kuenssberg report in 2017. They misrepresented Jeremy Corbyn's view on having a shoot to kill policy because they edited a question and an answer to look like they went together when they did not. And it broke impartiality and accuracy rules. So viewers were presented with a question about what Corbyn thought was an acceptable response to a Paris-style attack in London, and then they used his answer from a question about shoot to kill. That was equally as misleading, if not more so, than the Donald Trump edit. But you know what? Donald Trump is probably the most powerful man in the world, and if the BBC can do anything right, it is literally getting down on the floor and prostrating itself to powerful interests. Because that's what it's done over Israel's genocide in Gaza. That's what it does when it lets Farage come on like every single programme going, where it has question time after question time when there's not a single left-wing voice in the room. The BBC gets into trouble when it doesn't lick the boots of powerful interests quite hard enough. That's when it really comes a cropper in these situations. The fact that no one was fired over the Corbyn thing, no one faced any consequences for the 2018 Russian hat editing of Corbyn. Just got away with it. Corbyn's been smeared in the media from the minute he was elected leader of the opposition. We know this. We know that he is a principled veteran MP who's held the same views on things since he was elected Parliament. He's been consistent in his causes. He's been consistent in the oppressed people that he stands up for and stands with. I am like, the only reason that a veteran Labour MP who dedicated his life to anti-racism was allowed to be smeared as a racist is because of media complicity within that. And not just media complicity, but the media leading the charge. Yes, I'm impressed that Derbyshire responded on X, but it is kind of the least she could do. And it also shows that pushing back in the moment was not a priority for her, because they see Corbyn as an easy punching bag, not just for the media, but for the Parliamentary Labour Party as well. He's like their voodoo doll that they can sort of stick pins in, or a punching bag, or like the level of disrespect that he gets from people who work in the same building in the House of Commons as him. They just don't see him as one of them, and they want to distance themselves from him like as far as possible. And the media act like almost like giggling bully schoolboys, like little hold your coat merchants, being like, "Ha, yes, Corbyn's such a racist." He should be suing all of them. And he's also, I think, interestingly, he's most abused in the media when he's seen as a threat. So in February this year, this is pre-your party, The Guardian ran this really nice, really friendly football feature in their sports section about Corbyn and his son. And Corbyn was saying, I've never liked private boxes, but football's really important to me and my family and my community. And it was friendly, and it didn't misrepresent him, and it didn't try and smear him as a racist and an anti-Semite. And why was that? It's because he'd sort of dropped off their radar at that point. It's like, well, he's not a threat to us, so we might as well treat him like a human being again. And then as soon as anything that he says or his positions are feeling like they could be a bit more of a challenge to the establishment in both politics and in the media, that's when the knives come out again. And that's when they start using him as this punching bag and throwing around this slur is frankly defamatory of being a racist, as though they have a complete right to do so when they absolutely do not.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that Guardian article, because what's really apparent is with the Guardian, it's like, we support, the change in the system and good politics when it doesn't really matter. So, for example, the amount of times you heard the Guardian wanting Labour to move left, they were saying, we should have an uplift of benefits, for example. We need to reduce inequality when it's a Blairite, leading the party. And then Jeremy Corbyn becomes leader, and suddenly all those policies are thrown out the window. Suddenly it's a rose-tinted look at Labour's past. And then when Jeremy Corbyn's no longer leader, the Guardian turns left-wing again. It's how they always operate, because they know he has no sort of... They're not scared of any sort of institutional power for the left. And once again, I think your colleague Arabastani's point about the Labour right, having the politics or playing politics on easy mode is very salient to this point too, because once again, this is a blue Labour figure, Glassman saying whatever he wants, and no one pushes back. And also with Victoria Derbyshire, I agree. I'm not impressed that she replied on Twitter. It was just such a low bar. But it reminds me when you have a newspaper like The Sun that plasts a fake story on the front, and they retract it by saying sorry by page 18 in a small little box. It's all well and good replying to someone on Twitter saying I made a mistake, but there in that moment when lots of people watching the BBC, that's what matters. But the BBC it should be called the British Bootlicking Corporation, if you ask me. It does suck up to economic and state power, which is what the Labour right can get away with anything they want. And I think it's also salient to talk about, the big stories, or the big story of this week with the BBC, how, yes, it was a bad edit of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is obviously powerful man, and also on the right wing, you see the BBC bow down to him. I don't even think that was a resigning matter. That's just my opinion. But say whatever you want about Jeremy Corbyn on the left, it's fine. Say when it came to the Panorama documentary with John Ware, literally concocting this anti-Semitism crisis with, left-wing Jewish people being smeared, there's no apology there. It's insane.